to this computer and I will send it to you. Is it recording? Yeah, okay, we are recording.
Okay.
All right, the overall adequacy of the derived regression model was tested for, okay, it's fine there. Analysis variance results tested by the now, okay, it can be seen. The p-value is less than the, so change that first significance to critical. So the 0.05 is a critical, but just call it a critical alpha.
Okay, critical alpha.
Yeah, and you can leave value there.
Okay.
Or you can delete it.
I'll leave it.
Yeah, good. Given that, it implies the overall multiple regression. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect.
Okay, so let's go to the next one. So actually, can we go back? You said this would be the title would be the multiple regression.
This is
of the ANOVA.
No, this is the ANOVA of the multiple regression. In other words, this ANOVA proves that the regression is significant. If that sig value on your ANOVA was greater than 0.05, that means your regression model is caca. It doesn't work.
Okay.
But this one says that yes, your regression model does in fact work. Yeah, just there you go. How about just put the ANOVA output of the multiple regression. Right, of the multiple regression.
Okay.
Now, I know it's easy to say, but try not to be nervous, you know. Remember, less is more. Don't go on and on and on
Yes.
about shit. Hey, you know, they expect you to be finished in less than an hour. They got, you know, they want to go to breakfast or something. So
Right.
less is more. And then always, you know, every couple of pages say, you know, how are we doing? Anybody got any questions? Anything like that, right?
Okay.
Try to put them at their ease.
Okay. Okay, let's go to the next one. So I actually have to make this slide a little bit better. It's kind of wordy, but from my understanding is, so we'll have these p-values, and for mindfulness, because it was, let's see, let me move this box out of the way. So mindfulness was 0.00, and coping strategies were 0.048. Since that was less than a significant value, then the effect that it has on the actual perceived stress.
It was less than the critical value. Okay.
Okay.
So right. Remember the critical alpha, the critical value, the critical alpha is always 0.05, and that's like your referee. So if the sig value,
gotcha.
Yeah, so these are what you're looking at here are all calculated significant values. And if the calculated sig values are less than 0.05, you get to say, yeah, this is a significant predictor. So what I'm looking at here is mindfulness is very, very correlated with your DV. Coping strategies is significantly, right, because it's less than 0.05, but social support is not related to whatever the DV is.
Right. Okay. So should I, for my wording here, should I say the critical value?
Yeah, you could, change significance level to critical alpha. Good. All right, the multiple regression can be derived using the regression model can be derived using. And what do you want to say in that first paragraph, right? It says the multiple regression model can be derived using the unstandardized coefficients. Now, if you're going to write out the equation, right,
Mm-hmm.
then you would say that. So try to
Okay.
change model to equation. But most people don't even care about the equation anymore.
Okay, we can just get rid of it.
Yeah, I would say get rid of that. Yeah, and that next one is the effect of each independent variable towards the dependent variable was tested. Okay, it can be seen, the p-values of the independent variables, which are mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so, okay. So inside the parentheses, put p is less than 0.001.
Okay, so P
It's
is
less than. You could use the symbol.
yeah. Where is that on here?
It's the one on top of the comma.
Okay, gotcha.
Good. And then just put 0.001. Change that last to 0 to a 1. Good. And then change that capital P to a little p.
Okay.
And get rid of that less. Good. Perfect. And then under coping strategies, same thing. Put little p equals 0.0048.
Okay.
No, equals. Good. Good, good. Good. And they're both less than 0.05. Good. Implies mindfulness and coping are having an effect. Okay, so input are having a significant effect. And get rid of towards and just change it to on.
On, yeah.
Good. Okay. Implies mindfulness and coping strategies are having a, get rid of the N and switch it with A. Implies mindfulness and coping strategies are having a significant, good. Good. Okay. However, the p-value of the social norm, p equals, little p equals, was less than, actually was greater than the alpha level, was greater than the critical alpha.
Should I use a symbol for that too?
You can just write it out.
Okay, it was greater
Than the critical alpha. And then, yeah, get rid of that. And then put 0.05 inside your parentheses. Good.
So do I still, with the 0.00?
Delete all them zeros.
Okay.
Good. So
Right,
hence,
so if it's greater, then it doesn't have a significant effect.
exactly. So hence
Okay.
a game that support, does not have an effect towards the stress level. That's perfect. That's perfect.
Okay. So, okay, so for this one, my understanding is if mindfulness, based on those significant levels, when mindfulness increases by 1 unit, then the perceived stress will decrease by 0.017. I'm sorry, 0.0174.
Okay, wait a minute. So delete that multiple regression model can be derived by using blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Yeah, get rid of that. All right, stress, perceived stress equals, oh, you did write it out. So put that thing that you just deleted back in. So what you're looking at here is the equation. Okay, so that's fine. Just leave that there. So perceived stress, that's your dV, is right, the constant 14 plus mindfulness. So change mindfulness to, where'd you get 174 from?
Okay, so it's in one of these, It's in one of these tables.
No, let's just use this table right here.
Okay, so alrighty.
Change that negative 0.174 to negative 0.591.
Oh, you know what? This is from the correlation. This is Pearson's correlation.
No, we're not. You're not going to write up the correlation here. This is the actual prediction equation from regression models. That's the main goal of regression models, is to come up with a formula that if you know some information about the predictors variables, you should be able to predict what their stress levels will be. So that's what this is about.
Right.
So, and then we use the B column numbers, right? Only the B column numbers. So mindfulness is negative 0.591. And then coping strategies, you got that one right, 0.203. And then delete the social support because it wasn't significant.
Yes, and I said if social support did have like an effect on stress, then it would decrease by 0.239, but it doesn't have significance, so we can ignore that.
Yeah,
so just kind of.
Yeah, just delete that whole thing after the plus sign.
Okay.
So that's good, right? So that is your prediction model for perceived stress. That's very good. Good. Now, so in other words, when mindfulness goes up, stress goes down, way down, right?
Actually, should I just put predictor model for stress as the actual title?
No, okay. So what I would do is I would probably put regression equation. So right before perceived stress. Oh no, okay, no. Multiple regression analysis. Now that part's fine. That part's fine. But where it says perceived stress, right in front of perceived stress, just type in regression equation : Good, right? So the DV is perceived stress, and then you got your constant, which is 14.6, blah, blah, blah. You got your mindfulness coefficient, which is negative 0.591, and then you got your coping strategies. That is perfect. Okay.
Okay.
So when mindfulness increases by 1 unit, then perceived stress will increase by negative 0.591 units.
Okay, decrease by negative
0.591. Good. Just put a period. You don't have to put units. They know that you're talking about units.
Okay.
And then when coping strategies increase by 1 unit, perceived stress will increase by, it's 0.2. You got an extra 0 in there. There you go.
Okay, perfect.
Good. Okay. So just put something in there. Say something like, since social support was not significant, it is not part of this equation. Right, since social support was not significant, it will not be part of this equation. Good, perfect. That is perfect.
Okay. Okay, so the next one, the one-way ANOVA. I know you just explained that to me.
Now, right. So every regression model runs a one-way ANOVA just to see if the regression model is significant or not. The overall model, right? You could have 25 different predictors. So it just runs a quick ANOVA to make sure that your regression is significant. which means you should continue and look into it. And this is, you found it. So normally that goes first.
Okay.
That's the first thing. When you're talking about a multiple regression model, the first box you look at is the ANOVA table, right? The ANOVA table, because the calculated significance value was 0.043, which was less than the critical alpha, 0.05. That tells us that the regression model is significant.
Okay.
And then you jump into the coping strategies and all that other stuff. So.
Okay, so we can move. So this can go before correlation analysis.
Yeah, okay, so show me correlation analysis first. I'm trying to, why would you run a correlation analysis?
So my hypothesis was to see if the linear, if there was a linear relationship with the DV and the independent variable. So that's why
Okay, and
I
that's
ran
fine.
the.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Now, the regression does that for you, right? It tells you all that other crap that you saw in there. It's checking the same thing that you did here, but there's nothing wrong here. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So just leave these where they are. Okay. Right.
Okay. So
because you're going to tell them again. But now, where is perceived stress? I'm sorry. Where is social support? It's the bottom one.
Yeah.
See, it says it's a significant relationship, but when you put it into the regression model, it's not.
Yeah, so that's another reason, because I got confused, even though it has a negative relationship or an inverse relationship, how come it doesn't have an effect? So what I was going to talk about is possibly being up in the pandemic may have, affected, just kind of affected that social support because we have to, social distance. So it could actually have a relationship, but it's not as effective because we're in this climate where we have to social distance ourselves.
Good. Now,
that's
okay.
how I was going to that's what I talked about in my, yeah.
Okay, so now say that's perfect what you said, but before you say the data suggests that. Okay. Right, because as we as the researcher, we don't know shit. You got to go by what the numbers say. Now, somebody might ask you, they say, well, it looks like it's strongly correlated when you ran a correlation, but how come it's not significant in the regression model? So if they do ask you that, say something like, there could be some moderation going on. In other words, one of the other variables might be influencing the relationship between social support and perceived stress. But you didn't go into that, and that's a whole nother can of worms that you really don't want to get into.
Okay, yeah, I heard that on the video, the moderators and mediators.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It could be a moderator, and it probably is it's probably mindfulness. Somehow mindfulness is overlapping in social support. Somehow that those two are strongly related to each other, more so than they are related to the DV. And that's when you get into the moderator mediator stuff. So.
Okay.
And then, if somebody asks you about that, if somebody starts hammering you about that, say, you know what, you're right. That we should look into that further. And then, after you become a doctor,
right.
You can say, you know what, I will look into that after this is all over.
So. Right. Okay. Alrighty. I think so. The ANOVA is okay where it is. That's okay. And,
yeah. Just remember that tells them that it is a significant regression model.
Right. And it's worth looking into.
It's basically it's the first thing you should look on a SPSS output. It's the second. Gotcha. It's weird. It's the second box, but it's the first thing you should look at, because again, if your ANOVA for a regression model is not significant, you could pack up and go home. That means nothing is predicting anything. So
okay. All right. So does that have anything to do? Well, no, actually, I'm getting confused now. I got it now. So for the ANOVA where it says one way, ANOVA that had a low statistical significance, since it's not like that high, is that okay to say?
No. Don't call it high or low. Just call it significant or not.
Okay.
And if it's less than 0.05, it's significant, period. Somebody might say that. Somebody might say, you know what? It's just barely under 0.05, you know? And then you're going to say, you know what? The data did it, right? The data, we're looking at the data. The data is the one that is decided. So you're right. It is, you know, it's not 0.001, but it is still significant, period. That's all you got to look at. So.
Okay.
Right, shows its statistical significance. Good, boom. In other words, the regression model works, right? At least one of your predictor variables is good at predicting the DV. That's what that means. And you're lucky 2 of them were.
Alrighty, so for my, not limitations, let me see. So for the discussion, basically, because my hypothesis, is the hypothesis the same as the null hypothesis? Is that the same thing?
They're related. The null hypothesis says there's no relation. And your hypothesis says there is a relation, okay?
Okay.
So H1 is partially supported. There is a linear relation between characteristic among non-actives and perceived stress. Right, okay, good. That's fine. H2 is partially supported. There's a linear relationship between psychology, coping strategy among non-active military spouses on their experiences of stress. Okay, in between psychological coping, mindfulness, yes, coping, yes, and H3, no. Well, you're good.
Right.
Now, don't say partially, because
that's what I was going to ask you.
It is supported.
Either not or it doesn't. Okay. I was thinking because the numbers were kind of low, that's why.
No, don't worry. Okay, and then put there is a significant linear relationship. In fact, just get rid of the word linear. There is a significant relationship. Good. And do the same thing with number 2. Get rid of linear and just put in significant. Good.
Okay. So since that's what I had set out to do, that's what I want to, and I got that. Should I talk about the multiple regression?
Now, okay, so
the effect of it.
The bottom line is, you know what affects stress, right? Mindfulness, very strong. That's your major predictor. That's your major player is mindfulness. So in your discussion, you would talk about, you know, since mindfulness, the data on mindfulness shows such a huge factor of stress, then maybe you should learn, you know, maybe these guys should learn mindfulness. Maybe they should bring mindfulness into their training program. Something like that, something along that line. And then number 2, the coping strategies, they too are effective. And then you talk about teaching them coping strategies. And then the stuff you said about the COVID shit with the support, that's where you could talk about that, you know, because this is the weirdest year.
Absolutely.
Since, you know, since Christ was born. I mean, and you just don't know, you know, that might not have been measured accurately because of what's going on.
Absolutely.
And now that could have been, that should be in your limitations as well.
Okay.
Right. One of the limitations was you finished this dissertation in a year of a pandemic.
Right.
So the data is going to be weird. You know, you don't know if it's weird or not. Okay. Another limitation, you should always put sample size.
Okay.
You always wish you had a bigger sample size, you know, always. Good. Right. So there's another one that you're only dealing with San Diego people. That's a good one. Right. And, oh, there it is right there. Pandemic. You got it right in the middle. Perfect. Okay. No, you're good. That looks really, really good.
Okay.
Now, you want to practice on me? You still got a half hour. And remember, less is more. Less is more. Try not to just read off of don't read off of these things per much, you know. Like
Right.
you could just say, you know, hypothesis 1 was supported, which was mindfulness. Mindfulness is a good predictor of stress. 2 was supported. Coping strategies is also a good predictor of stress. And in social support, it was not. You know, the data showed that social support was not a good predictor of stress. And you could say, you know, that surprised you. You know,
Okay.
that really surprised you because you know, you're a big believer in social support. And but again, you know, who knows what's going on with this crazy pandemic shit going on. So, and don't cuss, don't be like me.
Okay. So
I
even though social support, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're spot on. You're gonna pass. I can tell already. You got all your ducks in a
Okay.
row. You got the right numbers. Your output is perfect. It's very clear. It's easy to follow. So again, just don't freak out about it. And they, you know, these guys do this for a living, and they're gonna tell you, they're gonna give you little things to do after you're done, and you're gonna say, oh, that's the greatest idea. And they'll be quick changes, like 15-minute changes or something. So
Okay. Alrighty. So even though social support has a relationship with perceived stress, the effect is not, it's not shown to have a great significance. Therefore, it's
and
not a predictor in stress.
yeah, so you're gonna say, so even though there's a strong correlation between social support and stress as a correlation, it did not show significance in the multiple regression model, period. And then you could say more than likely social support was being affected by one of the other predictor variables. Either more than likely it was probably the mindfulness, and or you know, secondly, it could be the coping strategies. It would be acting as a moderator, possibly a mediator. Now, don't write this down, but a moderator or a mediator means this. So you got mindfulness, you got coping strategies, you got social support. Those are your predictor variables. Stress is the DV. So what was probably going on is mindfulness is strongly correlated with social support more than it
Mm-hmm.
is with
Stress.
stress. So that's what causes
Mm-hmm.
this craziness. So, and just say
Okay.
something like that. Just say more than likely social support is strongly correlated with mindfulness than it is with stress. Therefore, you got these. That's why the multiple regression was used in the first place. It kind of weaved
Okay.
out that overlap. So,
Okay.
and they might ask you, you know, why didn't you try to prove it? And you're going to
And
say, that's a great idea. I'll get back to you on that.
right, right. Okay. Oh, man.
Yeah, it's a stressful time. There's no question about it. But believe me, I've seen thousands, over 1,000 of these, and yours is spot on. You're perfect. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I'll go back and fix that up.
Yeah. So remember, calm. You might want to start out with a little joke or something, you know, blah, 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 blah. Just how's everybody doing? You know, hope you find your fell, and say, you know, we're gonna go through this thing. Please stop me if you have any questions. And then, you know, just try to go as fast as you can, but don't seem rushed
Okay.
because these people have read it before, right?
Right.
And they want to make sure that it's polished. That's all they're looking for. They're looking for the polish. They're looking for anything that somebody might say, you know what, you misspelled this word here, or the grammar's wrong here, or you didn't cite this thing right, something like that. That's all they're looking for. So
Okay.
it looks good to me. So
Okay. I had to fix that part. Let me see.
I can't read them little things on the bottom there. There you go.
Right. My computer does this thing where it suggests designs, and I chose this one, but it'll like make the font like really,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Good. Oh, today's my nephew's birthday. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Well, at least you remembered.
Well, yesterday was my son's birthday. They were born a day apart, 6 years apart, but 1 day apart. So I'll
Oh,
give
okay,
you.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, my birthday is on the 15th, so this is my present to myself.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
A lot of February babies. Yeah, my wife's birthday's this month.
Yeah,
My
yep.
granddaughters and
Oh, wow. Okay. Yep. You got your work cut out for you, huh? With
oh
everybody's
yeah.
birthday. Okay, so I'll quickly go over it. I do still need to practice and really kind of calm my nerves, but I think it's good to practice with someone rather than, by myself. So,
Yeah.
okay.
If I hear something, I'll stop you.
Alrighty. Okay. Alrighty. So, happy Friday, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Porscha McLean-Duncan. I will be presenting on the effects of deployment in military spouses. The title of my research is The Impact of Coping Strategies, Social Support, and Mindfulness upon the Experience of Perceived Stress Due to Military Deployment by U.S. Marine Spouses. Ooh, that's a mouthful, huh?
That's a good one.
So I want to just, okay. I want to just thank the committee members for being here, Dr. Epstein, the program director, Dr. Shoemaker, Dr. Campbell, and Dr. Harris. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey and just giving me the guidance and support. So now let's go into the agenda. We're going to go over the problem, the purpose of the study, the conceptual framework, as well as the research questions that drove this study. We'll then go into the literature review and talk about what does the study say about these the research, as well as the methodology that was used, the results, and then finally the discussion. Am I talking too fast?
Oh, yeah, it was perfect. It was perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the problem. Research studies, they reveal that these spouses, they have high perceived stress levels, and on top of that, they also may have emotional and psychological problems going on during deployment. There's also relationship dysfunction, along with other related health problems. And all these things may be occurring in the military spouses while their partners are on deployment. For that reason, I wanted to explore the impact of mindfulness characteristics, psychological coping, and social support in these spouses and see if they have some type of relationship. I believe that this planned research would further enhance the scarce literature that is on this population of military spouses and the backdrop of their partners facing constant military deployments. I also believe that the findings of this research will help inform military hierarchy and also help military support staff as well as non-affiliated organization in ways to encourage a high quality of life for these military spouses.
Perfect.
So the conceptual framework that was used is basically the amount of stress that a spouse perceives and their utilization of various coping strategies, mindfulness techniques, and social support have a linear relationship. So the goal of this current study is to explore these factors and to see their effect on perceived stress during deployment for these military spouses. So does anyone have any questions so far? Are we good?
Why did you use linear?
I used linear because my chair and I, should it be a different word than linear?
No. If your chair said linear, there's nothing wrong with linear. We all know what you mean, right? There's a relationship between this variable and that variable. But somebody might ask that.
Okay.
So if somebody says, why did you choose linear? And just say, that's one of the assumptions of a multiple regression model.
Okay. Okay. So the research questions that drove this study were, is there a linear relationship between mindfulness and the military spouse's perceived stress? Is there a linear relationship between the psychological coping strategies on the military spouses and their perceived stress? And lastly, is there a linear relationship between social support among the military spouses and the perceived stress?
Perfect.
Okay, so let's get into the literature, specifically the deployment. So the United States military forces, at one point, it was in a heightened state of armed conflict, and that was during the terrorist attack in New York City on September 11, 2001. Since the early 2000s, roughly over 2 million active military members, they served on 5.4 million deployments, and the United States Army servicemen and women, they made up the majority of those deployments. Let me just put this over here so I can see.
Yeah, the Zoom.
Okay.
In a way.
So I have, let me see. I have flashcards too, but, and it's just basically to break down what does op tempo mean. That's the utilization of, let me see, what's the word that they use? I'm gonna get this together, don't worry.
You're fine, you're fine. Now, so this is the
Okay.
literature saying is basically that since 911, military guys have been put on deployment, in the
Constantly.
millions. Right. So this is
Right.
not a minor problem. This is a major issue here.
Okay. And I think it's the utilization of weapons and the readiness that they have to respond within a certain amount of time. And basically that kind of breaks up the its operational tempo. So that was shown to be high, and these deployments, they were stationed in hazardous duty stations, and it would range from 6 to 18 months. And sometimes these units would undergo multiple deployments, and these squadrons would have to also attend mandatory training. So on top of a 6 to 18 month separation from spouses, from family, they also had to do a training, which would also be lengthy. So also for September, during September 11th, the attacks from the military servicemen and women served across the 5 branches. And they have gone on several deployments with numbers reaching over 220,000 soldiers, deploying at the very least 3 times. According to the DoD, or Department of Defense, roughly 7,000 service members' lives were killed during the Overseas Contingency Operation, or the GWOT, the War on Terrorism.
How about changing the word killed to lost?
Okay.
Right, the members' lives were lost. Good. Man, that's horrible. Jeez.
Tell me about it. Okay, so service members were lost during the overseas contingency, and over 52,000 were physically wounded. I have a question. So when I do have like a source, do I have to say that source?
No, not during the presentation, right? Because you have it in your dissertation somewhere, right? At the very back, you got all your sources and everything. So
okay. So let's get into the stages of deployment. There are 5 stages of deployment that were noted. Okay, so you said don't talk about like the source, right?
Yeah, you don't need to talk about the source, right?
Okay.
Just say the literature says blah, blah,
blah. Okay, so the literature notes that there are 5 stages of deployment. The first one is the pre-deployment, and that initiates the family into this transition period where the service member, they're going to be getting ready for this time apart. The second is the deployment, which is a departure from the first month of the separation. Sustainment is going to be the stay-at-home spouse. He or she will be establishing new sources of support as well as new routines without the deployed spouse. The fourth is the late deployment, and that's the month before the service member. That's when they'll return to their homes. And lastly, post-deployment, and that is the return of the service member, but also the rehabilitation of the family unit. So during each of these stages, there are going to be unique challenges as well as stressors for the civilian spouses.
Good.
So research says that when a spouse is away from her active duty member, there's high levels of perceived stress. And that stress level is inversely related to the commitment to health and wellness. So in other words, if there's high stress levels, it's going to be the quality of life as well as their health may be low. I probably shouldn't say low, but
Just, so you could say, right, perceived stress and depression, it's kind of obvious, right? The higher the stress, the more the depression, right? I mean,
right,
the
right,
employment
yeah,
thing, it basically really puts the pressure on family members, family units. I mean,
absolutely. I'm actually going to be going through one March 13th. So my husband, he's going to be leaving for 6 months.
oh,
I know. I'm like, God, please now.
where's he
But
going?
yeah, that's another. He's going to Japan.
Wow.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah. But the good thing is, before he gets back, I can meet him in Hawaii. And I've never been, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'll be fun.
Right. Okay, so the Department of Defense also reported that spouses, they have high depression rates, and over 30% perceived stress and depression during deployment as a problem was a large. Okay, let me just do that all over again. The Department of Defense reported data from a random sampling of spouses, and they indicated that there was high depression. Over 30% perceived stress and depression during deployment was seen as a large problem, was seen as a huge problem to a large extent, and 44% to a moderate extent, which is higher than the 2015 spouse survey. So I think what I'm trying to say in this is that, so over the years, like every year you see like, the spouses being more depressed, being more stressed, like it's getting worse.
Right. And it's a
Probably,
lot of them, right? 30% of them, it's a serious problem. And 44%,
right,
it's a mildly serious problem. So it's
moderate,
bad, right?
right,
So three
yeah,
out of four people, it's going to be a major problem. So
absolutely, okay. So studies also showed that there was a positive relationship between perceived stress and somatization, with the common complaints being difficulty sleeping, back problems, tiredness, things like anxiety, low energy, and then for the women, issues with menstruation.
right.
Okay, so in these, for the military spouses, the studies also show that 80% of these spouses have considered divorce compared to 70% of the civilian spouses. So not only are they having these effects on their health, their marriages and relationships are also being strained. Couples are challenged to reinstate the family structure, rebuild emotional connection, and also reestablish trust and safety that was there prior to the deployment. So, in addition to the strained marriages, there's also mental health challenges that military spouses may endure. And the studies indicate that the deployment does take a toll on the mental health. Sometimes there's psychiatric conditions such as insomnia, somatization, as I previously named, but also PTSD and panic disorder, as well as anxiety. The Department of Defense reported that 88% of the 368,000 military spouses experienced an increase of feelings of loneliness and depression. And then the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, they reported that 30% of the nation's 900,000 military spouse population experienced a mental illness within the year of 2016.
Okay. So all this literature stuff is basically saying the same thing, that the deployment is really affecting the family in a bad way.
Okay.
There's no question about it. It's a huge problem. So
Okay, so deployment, as I mentioned, deployment is a monumental experience. It can trigger a lot of reaction and can lead to maladaptive behaviors. And that can also lead to abuse, to disconnect from reality. So studies show that civilian spouses of military members can be vulnerable and use damaging coping strategies such as the misuse of prescription drugs, abuse of alcohol, and the misuse of finances, as well as infidelity. In another study, military wives between the age of 18 and 49 were found to abuse prescription drugs meant to treat mental health disorders more likely than civilian spouses. So on the contrary, positive coping strategies or adaptive strategies, they can prove to be more effective in managing or reducing the feelings of isolation. And they can also bring about resilience. In a study, it was reported that reframing the upsetting occasion can decrease feelings of anxiety, and which in turn can empower the spouse to be more optimistic and resilient. Research also suggests that the use of social support, self-care, and having communication are positive coping strategies that can decrease stress. Another study found that military couples who discussed a plan prior to deployment and actually had some type of self-distraction, whether it be volunteering or exercising or just focusing on the kids, they also reported lower levels of perceived stress. So on social support and well-being, the spouses having a network or a community where they feel connected and a sense of belonging, that can have a substantial effect, and that can also decrease the perceived stress and challenges that they may experience. In a study, it concluded that social support was a positive predictor in psychological well-being, life satisfaction, as well as coping abilities among these spouses. Another study reported that there was a positive relationship between social support and the spouse's psychological health and self-esteem. And there was also a study that was conducted which reported high levels of social connectiveness positively influenced military spouses' overall being. So basically, these studies are showing that social support is a great predictor of stress and that it can offer some type of resilience or can decrease the stress that the spouse may be experiencing. So the literature suggests that mindfulness practices, which is the self-awareness that one may have, its intentional practice of active, open, and non-judgmental awareness, that show that mindfulness can help spouses cope and navigate feelings of stress. A study showed that mindfulness-based preventions and interventions were very effective at enhancing communication, emotional regulation, as well as behavioral patterns. Another study suggested that mindfulness played a role in sustaining brain function. And in that study, there was 106 spouses, and those spouses were seen to have some type of resilience where mindfulness practice promoted the degradation of attention as well as working memory.
do you explain what mindfulness is?
Not prior to this, but should I?
Just in a sentence or two, I don't know what mindfulness is, so.
Yeah, I figured that would come up because a lot of people ask me that. So I talked about it. Oops, let me go back. So I say that, actually, let me put it here. Is it okay to just mention it here, or should I mention it earlier
Um,
or both times?
just once is enough, right? So mindfulness includes what? I mean, what do people that are practicing mindfulness practicing? What exactly are they doing? So
Okay, so basically mindfulness is when a person is really taking account of how they're perceiving the world around them. They're neither so far to where they're anxious, or they're not so caught up in the past to where they're depressed. They're just in the now. So they're just practicing, just an open and non-judgmental awareness.
good, something just like that. Just right off the hip. You don't have to write it in there somewhere, right? It's just they're aware of
Okay,
what's going on, and
right.
like I said, they try to keep it in the now, and so that's good. I like that.
Okay. So the methodology included a sample of, or the sample population included 92 spouses of U.S. Marine service members. And they were at least 18 years of age and experienced at least one deployment or multiple deployment, whether it be active or during a past deployment. So the participants were recruited via a private Facebook page. And should I say about the purposive snowballing, like having a spouse kind of recommend another spouse?
Yeah, that's fine. You don't have to write it down. You could if somebody asks you, right? They say, "How did you get your
Okay.
sample size?" You could say, "You know what? It was who one spouse. They know a lot of other spouses, and just just throw it in there. It's like the snowball effect. You just something like that."
Okay. So I actually got this question the first time I defended it, and so it said that the priority sample size calculator, I had to have at least 80% for it to be like valid. So is it okay for me to talk about the sample size being 80, but I got 92 spouses, supposedly 92 spouses
Yeah, you're going to say something
for
like
multiple regression?
according to an a priori power analysis, the minimum sample size of 82 would give me the minimum number that I needed to make sure that the output was considered valid. And your
Okay.
your sample size was greater than the minimum, so therefore sample size is not an issue. Something like that. So
Okay. Alrighty. So the multiple regression assessed 3 predictor variables: mindfulness, coping mechanisms, social support, and predicting the dependent variable perceived stress. Should that be worded a little bit different?
read it to me again.
A
Okay, so
priori samples, yeah.
size calculator
Multiple
for
reg
multiple regression assessed 3 predictor variables. And perceived stress.
I feel like I'm saying predicting too much.
So how about this? An a priori power analysis. I'm sorry, an a priori power analysis is Latin.
So you said sample analysis?
Power, an a
Oh,
priori
power.
power analysis for a multiple regression, with 3 predictor variables. And so you don't need to name the variables. They already know what they are.
Okay.
Indicated that a minimum sample size needed was 85 or whatever it was. And your sample size was 92. So minimum sample size of 80 something, whatever it was, 80 participants.
For validity, or?
Just leave it at participants.
Okay.
Right, an a priori power analysis for multiple with 3 predictor variables indicated minimum sample size of 80. That's good. So, okay.
Okay.
That's
Perfect.
fine. Yeah.
So this talks about like how I did everything. I'm not sure if I even have to go into this. I kept the slides that I did for the first offense, but it just talks about me, posting on Facebook. Then they had like an email recruitment invitation. They had to, prior to completing the survey, they had to read and accept the consent form. And it was totally voluntary and confidential. And once the participants did complete the survey, they can enter their contact information in order to participate in a special video, basically a video that highlights deployment and just really appreciating the spouses. I probably should just kind of say that.
Yeah, just
appreciating like this.
Just from the heart, just say, this is how you got your people, blah, 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 blah. This is how you test. Porscha, I hate to do this to you. I'm getting contacted. Okay. I have a 10 o'clock. It's getting cranky.
No problem. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Garner. I really appreciate you. Thank
you're
you.
welcome. And good luck. You're going to knock them out of the park. Okay. So when this recording gets finished, I'll send it to you.
Sounds good. Thank you.